Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about something I came across by accident, and it's to do with the decline of the Roman Empire, which is something that's entranced and bewitched historians for many hundreds of years. Now, someone who's done, traveled the world a million times over on business, one thing that sort of intrigued me about Rome or any of the ancient, successful or hugely influential ancient civilizations. It's hard to believe today when you walk around Rome or Athens or anywhere around the Middle East, or even London today for that matter. You look at it and think, how is it possible that these people that you see today could have had such a huge and dominant and successful and militarily and commercially successful, technologically successful empire, when you look around today and you think, gee, these guys couldn't sweep a floor without fucking it up. And you just think the people that you see around you just don't have it in them to create this empire. And of course, they may not be the same people. And this is an important consideration. The values, the times, the forces that shape them, of course, have changed and produced, therefore, different and created different people, and the same could be said of any great empire. It's quite astonishing to walk around. I walked around. I managed to get a couple of days off and was over there on business a while ago, and I was walking around London and looking at 85 years previously, Britain was the largest, greatest empire that the world had ever known, and yet here I am 85 years later looking at an empire, looking at something that's a shadow of it. So you can still see the signs of the incredible grandeur of 85 years earlier, but you look around you, and this was before the mass migration thing had taken off. There weren't that many black people around in London at the time. So it struck me as, wow, talk about coming down in the world that quickly. So it went from being, again, this glittering huge empire, and 85 years later, it's a shadow, even a shadow of its former self. Nonetheless, coming to Rome now this is a few articles that I saw about the testing of the DNA of the skeletal remains that have been exhumed from graves or just dug out of the ground and this sort of thing, that have been dated and then DNA tested. Now, the skeletons range from around 250 BC or even a bit earlier than that, and go to what would be the final, if you like, the end of the Roman Empire, 500, or the Western Roman Empire, centered around Rome, 500 AD or so. So it's quite a considerable span of 750 years. And then that's an enduring empire, no matter how you slice and dice out that. That is an extremely enduring empire, certainly in modern terms, where empires that last more than a couple of hundred years are doing well. So anyway, let's have a look at this, because there are a few different articles, and I saw one, and then I remembered what I'd seen in a previous article, so I sort of got them together, and I tried to find the original one, which I couldn't, but and as you can tell, I'm not prepared to spend vast amounts of time delving through the whole thing. If I can't get the video together in 10 minutes of running around, I'm kind of not doing because I'm working. If I find a slotting time, I'll just jump on and do these sort of radio videos that without any production or graphics. Now, what happened was the skeletal remains that were tested and dated from, if you like, sort of the Roman empires is really building up. So the wars with Carthage, where the Romans were asserting, their dominance of that Mediterranean basin at least, and doing so with some sort of vigor and high levels of achievement. Their achievement in building the Mediterranean's dominant navy, for example, that was a huge achievement. They managed to capture a Carthaginian vessel which had all the components of the vessel numbered, but the Romans managed to engineer this and then improve upon it and did so within the space of a decade is a huge achievement, given the age. And shows a very early sign of, or earlier sign of, their tremendous engineering capability. So they're looking at the skeletal remains. Anyway, the early skeletal remains were all European. There was no evidence of anyone outside of the Europeans. So the people that built the Roman Empire were Europeans. They weren't from North Africa. They weren't from the Levant, around what would be modern day Lebanon, Israel, and so on. They weren't from say Eastern Europe, the Ukrainian, Russian steppes, or they were Europeans, Central West Europeans, and they're the ones that built the empire. And you'll notice the earlier Roman emperors. There seems to be an over-representation of sort of blonde, blue-eyed people. That swarthiness that you associate with Italians today doesn't seem to. You can't really find much of it. As you head further north in Italy, the skin becomes lighter and the hair becomes fairer and the eyes bluer, that sort of thing. As you head north, sort of become more what we would say Germanic, I guess, today. But in the south of Italy, and including Rome, there's a lot of what you can see is the Greek and Arabic type influences, and much swarthier type complexions, but not so for the people that built the Roman Empire. And even up until the time of Marcus Aurelius and that sort of thing, the European influence was much greater. You're starting to see as the Roman Empire on a mercantile basis, and again, areas of conquest as well. The Romans were starting to give citizenship in selected cases, and merchants were able to come to Rome to do business and those sorts of things. So you're starting to see some evidence of it. But by the time the visible signs of the empire in decline are evident from historical records, if you look at the skeletal remains that were dated from that time, you see the sun. So within 100 years, really, from say, I don't know, sort of the late 200s onwards, Rome just suddenly is hit with this avalanche of non-Europeans, and there's some sort of integration, but not a whole lot. You're seeing very pure genetics of North African descent, and still the pure genetics of the European sort of Romans. Just that the European Romans are now in a decided minority. Now that happened very quickly. It went from sort of being 90% Euro-Roman to being 65% non-Euro-Roman within 100 years. And this is incredible. Now, again, the population of Rome, once it hit approximately 1 million, give or take, it sort of stayed reasonably consistent over that span of a couple of 100 years, I guess. So what we're seeing is that this is not just an expansion. That the city didn't go from 1 million to 3 million, and therefore that's how the Euro-Romans were displaced or replaced, call it what you like. But it actually was the city's population stayed roughly stable. Again, give or take, stayed roughly stable. But the Euro-Romans went from 90% to 35% within 100 years. I mean, fuck. Now that coincides with the rapid decline of the empire, and coincides with people just not wanting to I want citizenship, and I want to take everything, and I want to get the free bread, and I want the services, but I don't want to take any responsibilities. I don't want to have to be obliged to fight in the army or defend the planet. Fuck that. I just want to take. I'm not going to give anything. Screw you. That attitude coincided with the massive influx of non-European Romans, as evidenced by the DNA testing on the skeletal remains. Now, this cannot be a fucking coincidence, just sheer coincidence. There's more to it than that. I think two things occurred. There was this massive influx of people that didn't give a flying fuck about Rome and its traditions, its history. It was the big glittering city. It was the biggest city by far the biggest city in the wider Mediterranean basin, one of the biggest cities in the world. And if you were a hustler or some sharp dude on the make, that's where you'd head. The message was out about free bread and free. They'll entertain you and give you free bread, and there's water fountains everywhere. You'll never go thirsty. Oh fuck, I'm heading to Rome, say these peasants from all over the place. So they can get there. So you've got this people who have no attachment to Rome at all. They're there just to get the free bread and circuses. And then the local Romans who see all this going on think, well, why should I put my ass on the line? Why should I risk myself? Why should I expose myself to various threats and dangers just so a bunch of freeloaders can come here and fuck the place up and commit all these crimes and so on? I think that's that the people that should have stepped up and traditionally would have. So why should I do it now? Look, my government's inviting in all these freeloaders, and then the freeloaders saying, "Hey, we're just here for the free stuff. Well, we don't give a fuck about anything else." And so there was nobody there. So come the threat from the external threats like Attila the Hun and those sort of dudes, there was very little. Attila actually was defeated in battle, but there was really no one prepared to stand up. And then the government had become weaker, and they were then importing various groups to compete with other groups in order to stay in power. So let's import these guys to fight those guys, so then they won't fight us, so we can keep the power and the perks of office, which is what we're seeing in the West today. It's virtually a replay of the decline of the Roman Empire. But an interesting interesting observation there. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.